is it or not? Have you ever looked at a documentary about a notorious cult and thought to yourself, I would never fall for that. I am way too smart to be brainwashed. It is a completely natural reaction. We all want to believe our minds are fortified fortresses. But the truth is, the most manipulative organizations do not recruit people by advertising themselves as restrictive cults. They lure you in with the promise of community, self-improvement, and boundless love. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating and sometimes terrifying psychology of how normal, intelligent people are turned into true believers. We will unpack the specific frameworks experts use to identify undue influence, look at some wild modern-day examples, and most importantly, equip you with the tools to protect your own mind. So, grab a cozy drink, settle in, and let us get started. To really understand how control works, we have to look at the pioneers of this research. Back in the mid-20th century, a psychiatrist named Robert J. Lifton studied thought reform and identified 8 specific psychological themes used to break down an individual's autonomy. He talked about concepts like milieu control, which is the strict regulation of all communication between a person and the outside world to isolate them from society. He also identified mystical manipulation, where leaders secretly orchestrate events to seem like spontaneous, divine miracles, making the follower feel a profound sense of higher purpose and destiny. Building on that foundation, mental health professional Stephen Hassan developed what is now famously known as the BITE model. BITE is an acronym that stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Hassan, who actually escaped from the Unification Church himself in the 1970s, realized that if an organization can dominate these 4 aspects of your life, they can effectively replace your authentic identity with a compliant, artificial one. Let us start with behavior control. This pillar involves the strict regulation of an individual's physical reality to instill dependency and obedience. Behavior control might look like strictly regulating your sleep, your diet, or your finances. For example, the organization NXIVM masqueraded as a self-help and executive success program. Underneath the corporate veneer, the leader, Keith Raniere, used extreme behavior control. Women in a secret inner circle called DOS were put on starvation diets of 500 calories a day, sleep-deprived, and even physically branded. These tactics capitalize on a psychological principle called depletion. If you exhaust a person's physical self-control, they become far more vulnerable to brainwashing. Another historical example is Synanon, which began in the 1950s as a groundbreaking drug rehabilitation program. Over time, the leader's authoritarian edicts escalated, eventually forcing members to shave their heads, undergo mandatory vasectomies, and even abort pregnancies. Next, we have information and thought control. Information control involves restricting your access to outside media or encouraging members to spy on each other. Thought control trains you to reject critical thinking. One of the most fascinating and insidious tools of thought control is something Robert J. Lifton called the thought-terminating cliché. This is a form of loaded language where complex human problems are compressed into brief, highly reductive, and definitive-sounding phrases. You have probably heard these in everyday everyday life. Phrases like, trust the process, everything happens for a reason, doubt your doubts, or it is what it is. While these might seem like harmless folk wisdom, in a high-control environment, they are used intentionally to shut down critical thinking and quell cognitive dissonance. When a member starts to question a contradiction or an abusive policy, the leader simply deploys a thought-terminating cliché, effectively ending the conversation and making the follower feel like they are the one with the problem. Then there is emotional control, which weaponizes guilt, shame, and fear to keep you entirely dependent on the group. Members are often subjected to love bombing, an intense shower of affection to gain their trust, which is later replaced by isolation and fear. Groups instill irrational fears about the catastrophic consequences of leaving, a tactic known as phobia indoctrination. They also use the foot in the door technique, starting with small, seemingly harmless requests before escalating to extreme demands. For instance, a group might first ask you to simply sing or meditate together, and gradually escalate to demanding you hand over your finances or commit harmful acts. You might be thinking this only applies to people living in isolated compounds, but modern cults are operating right now on your social media feeds. Even commercial organizations, like certain multi-level marketing companies, utilize the exact same commercial cult tactics. They push toxic positivity, discourage distributors from reading critical information from outside sources, and emphasize recruiting your friends and family until you are financially and socially trapped. In these MLMs, roughly 99% of participants actually lose money, yet they are manipulated into believing it is entirely their own fault for not working hard enough. Then we have online groups like Twin Flames Universe, which promise to help people find their ultimate soulmates. Operating almost entirely through the internet, the leaders pressured followers to cut ties with their families, heavily controlled their intimate relationships, and even coerced some straight female members into transitioning their genders, simply because there were not enough men in the group to make matched pairs. So, how do we navigate a world so full of undue influence? Stephen Hassan offers a brilliant tool called the influence continuum. It reminds us that influence itself is not inherently bad. We are influenced by our friends, teachers, and society every day. The difference between healthy influence and destructive mind control comes down to informed consent and respect for your individuality. A healthy organization encourages your authentic self, welcomes critical questions, and most importantly, allows you to leave freely without the threat of being shunned or condemned. If you ever find yourself worried about a loved one who seems trapped in a coercive group, the worst thing you can do is aggressively attack their beliefs. Historically, people used forceful, sometimes illegal deprogramming methods, which often involved kidnapping and caused massive trauma. Today, experts recommend the strategic interactive approach. This method is non-coercive and focuses on building a warm, respectful relationship. By asking curious, thought-provoking questions, you can help empower the person to reality test their own environment and gradually wake up their authentic self that has been suppressed by the group's programming. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today to explore this incredibly important topic. Human psychology is beautifully complex, but it can also be vulnerable. By understanding models like the BITE framework and thought-terminating cliches, we empower ourselves and protect the people we love from exploitation. I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever encountered a group or a situation that felt just a little too controlling? How did you handle it? Let us get a supportive and respectful conversation going down there. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and make sure you are subscribed so we can keep learning and growing together. Until next time, trust your intuition, stay curious, and take wonderful care of yourselves.